The massive alien assembly hall buzzed with dozens of different languages as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for another routine session. Commander Lee Hyun sat quietly in the back section reserved for minor species, his dark eyes watching the proceedings with careful attention. Around him, the air smelled of strange chemicals and alien pheromones that made his nose twitch. The Zeltharian delegate clicked across the polished floor on 6 insect-like legs, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's bright lights. His voice came out as a series of harsh clicking sounds that the universal translator converted into words that dripped with contempt. The human colonies continue to meet basic food production quotas, the creature announced, mandibles snapping together with each word, though their efficiency remains disappointingly low compared to proper species. Hyun kept his face completely blank, even as anger burned in his chest. For 37 years, Earth had been part of this so-called Galactic Confederation, and, for 37 years, they had been treated like children. Worse than children, actually. More like useful pets that could grow crops and perform simple tasks. The Vrex representative, a tall being covered in blue-green scales, rose from his seat with a sound like rustling leaves. Perhaps the humans would benefit from more direct supervision, he suggested, his yellow eyes gleaming. My people have extensive experience in managing less developed worlds. A few delegates laughed at this, though their versions of laughter sounded nothing like human amusement. One species made a sound like breaking glass while another produced a low rumbling that vibrated through the floor. Hyun had heard it all before. Every meeting was the same. The powerful species talked about the weaker ones like they were discussing livestock. Earth provided food, raw materials, and basic research, while the Zeltharians and their allies made all the important decisions. Humans were allowed to speak, but nobody ever listened. Commander Hyun, the session leader, called out, his voice flat with boredom. Does Earth have any concerns to present today? Hyun stood slowly, feeling hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. Some looked curious, others annoyed that their time was being wasted. He cleared his throat and spoke in the calm, measured tone he had practiced for years. Earth continues to support Confederation policies, he said simply. We remain committed to peaceful cooperation. The session leader made a note on his electronic tablet without looking up. Very good. Moving on to resource allocation for the Outer Rim territories. And just like that, humanity's voice in galactic affairs was dismissed. Hyun sat back down, his hands folded in his lap, while the real powers discussed dividing up star systems like they were slicing a pie. Light years away, on a small moon orbiting a gas giant that appeared on no official charts, Dr. Park Min-ho worked alone in a laboratory that officially did not exist. The facility was buried deep underground, its energy signature masked by the natural radiation of the giant planet nearby. Only a handful of people in the entire galaxy knew it was there. Min-ho adjusted the controls on a device that looked like a metal sphere covered in glowing circuits. The quantum field generator hummed softly as it manipulated the basic forces of reality itself. According to everything the galaxy's greatest scientists knew, what he was doing was impossible. Matter could not be converted to pure energy and back again without massive equipment and enormous power sources. Yet here it was, working perfectly in a device no larger than a basketball. Test sequence 47 successful, Min-ho spoke into his recording device. Quantum manipulation field remains stable for 37 minutes before requiring reset. Energy output exceeds theoretical maximum by 400%. He made careful notes on his tablet, recording data that would revolutionize galactic civilization if anyone knew it existed. But this research, like dozens of similar projects scattered across hidden facilities throughout human space, remained completely secret. His communication system chimed softly. A message from Earth appeared on his screen, brief and coded. Package delivery confirmed. Continue current projects. Phase 2 authorization pending. Min-ho smiled grimly and deleted the message. Package delivery meant another insult, another dismissal, another act of casual cruelty directed at humanity by their supposed allies. Each incident was carefully recorded, cataloged, and remembered. The galaxy thought humans were weak because they did not fight back. They had no idea that humanity was simply waiting for the right moment. In another part of the galaxy, Captain Kim So-young patrolled the border between human and Zeltharian space in her small scout ship. Officially, she was conducting routine surveys of uninhabited systems. Unofficially, she was testing technology that could make her ship invisible to any known detection method. Her sensors picked up a Zeltharian patrol heading toward a human colony world. The insect-like aliens often buzzed around human territory like flies around fruit, looking for excuses to expand their influence. So-young watched them pass, her ship's advanced stealth systems keeping her completely hidden. The Zeltharians had no idea they were being watched. They never did. For decades, humanity had been observing, learning, and preparing while the galaxy dismissed them as harmless farmers. Soon, very soon, that comfortable illusion would be shattered forever. But not today. Today, humanity would continue to appear weak, continue to accept insults with quiet dignity, continue to let the galaxy believe they were helpless. The longer this charade continued, the more complete their eventual victory would be. The first warning came at 0347 hours local time. Captain Kim So-young was drinking coffee in her patrol ship when the emergency signal burst through the communication array like a scream in the darkness. The message was broken, filled with static and terror. "This is New Geneva Colony. Under attack, Zeltharian ships. They're killing everyone. Please help." Then silence. So-young dropped her coffee cup and rushed to the navigation controls. Her ship, the Morning Star, was only 3 hours away from New Geneva at maximum speed. She pushed the engines beyond their safety limits, but she knew in her heart that she would be too late. New Geneva had been one of humanity's most peaceful colonies. 15,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and their families. They grew the special grain that fed half the human colonies in that sector. Children played in fields of golden wheat under a gentle orange sun. It was the kind of place where people never locked their doors. When So-young arrived at the system, she found a graveyard. The colony's orbital station was twisted metal floating in space. The planet's surface showed massive burn marks where the Zeltharian energy weapons had struck. Entire cities had been reduced to smoking craters. The wheat fields were black ash scattered by the wind. So-young's hands shook as she piloted her ship through the debris field. Her sensors detected no life, signs from the planet below. 15,000 people gone in a single morning. She found pieces of the colony's small defense ships scattered like broken toys. The investigation would later show that the attack had lasted only 4 hours. The Zeltharians had come without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Men, women, children, elderly grandparents, none had been spared. The official reason given was failure to comply with relocation orders. The real reason was simpler. The insect-like aliens wanted the planet for themselves. Among the ruins, So-young found the body of a small girl clutching a handmade doll. The child could not have been more than 8 years old. Her name, according to the colony records, was Yoon Ji-woo. She had been in the 2nd grade and loved to draw pictures of flowers. So-young knelt beside the child's body for a long time, her tears falling silently. Around her, the wind carried the smell of smoke and death across what had once been paradise. The news reached Earth within hours. The Global Defense Council met in emergency session in their hidden facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Choi Tae-min stood before a room full of humanity's military leaders, his weathered face grim with controlled fury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, despite the rage burning in his eyes. "New Geneva is gone. Every man, woman, and child murdered by Zeltharian forces. This was not a military target. This was not a strategic location. This was a farming colony full of peaceful civilians. The room was deadly quiet. On the main screen, satellite images showed the devastation. Charts displayed the names and faces of the dead, teachers, doctors, farmers, shopkeepers, children, who would never grow up. The Galactic Confederation's response has been predictable," Taemin continued. "They issued a statement expressing deep concern and calling for dialogue between all parties. The Vrex delegate suggested that the humans should have been more cooperative with the relocation orders. An angry murmur ran through the room. General Park Hyejin stood up, her face flushed with anger. "Sir, we cannot let this stand. If we do nothing, they will think they can murder us with impunity." "Indeed they will," Taemin agreed. "For 37 years we have followed the policy of peaceful integration. We have accepted insults, exploitation, and casual cruelty because we believed that patience would eventually win us respect. New, Geneva proves that policy has failed." He walked to another wall display that showed technical specifications for weapons and ships that officially did not exist. The designs were decades ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. Quantum manipulation, drives that could fold spacetime, energy weapons that channeled the power of stars, defensive systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Project Prometheus has been operational for 15 years, Taemin said quietly. "We have the capability to defend ourselves. The question is whether we have the will." Dr. Shin Woo-jin, head of the Secret Research Division, spoke from his seat near the back. "Admiral, if we reveal our true capabilities, there will be no going back. The galaxy will never see us as harmless farmers again." "Good," Taemin replied, "because we are not harmless farmers. We are human beings, and human beings do not kneel to bullies and murderers." The vote was unanimous. After 4 decades of enforced humility, humanity would finally show the galaxy their true face. Within hours, coded messages went out to every human colony, every research station, every military facility hidden in the depths of space. The sleeper agents planted in alien governments received their activation orders. Ships that had pretended to be cargo haulers began revealing their true nature as advanced warships. On Nexus Prime, Commander Lee Hyun received his orders and smiled for the first time in years. Tomorrow he would attend another Confederation session. But this time, when he spoke, the galaxy would listen. The age of humanity's silence was ending. The age of fire was about to begin. The Zeltharian supply convoy was making its routine patrol through Sector 7 when something impossible happened. Commander Zekthon was reviewing supply reports when every system on his ship simply stopped working. The engines died mid-flight. The weapons powered down. Even the life support systems began failing. "What is happening?" Zekthon clicked angrily at his crew, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting that had flickered on. "Get me a damage report." But there was no damage to report. The ship's computer systems showed no errors, no malfunctions, no external attacks. Everything had simply stopped working at exactly the same moment. Across the convoy, 8 other Zeltharian ships reported identical problems. For 6 terrifying hours, they drifted in the cold vacuum of space. The temperature inside the ships dropped steadily as the life support struggled to function. Emergency. Power kept them alive, but barely. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found the entire convoy helpless and confused. The investigation teams found nothing. No weapon signatures, no evidence of sabotage, no unusual energy readings. The ships had simply failed for no apparent reason. Within a day, all systems were working perfectly again, as if nothing had ever happened. Similar incidents began occurring across Zeltharian space, with increasing frequency. A major military base on the border lost all power for 3 days. Navigation. Computers on patrol ships began sending fleets in completely wrong directions, leaving them stranded light years from their destinations. Equipment that had worked flawlessly for centuries started breaking down at the worst possible moments. The Zeltharian High Command was furious but helpless. They could find no cause for the failures and no pattern to predict when they would happen next. Their engineers worked around the clock, but every fix seemed temporary. As soon as one problem was solved, another would appear somewhere else. On Nexus Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Confederation was buzzing with nervous energy. The Zeltharian delegate, Supreme Commander Vextar, paced back and forth. On his 6 legs, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "These are not random equipment failures," he insisted, his translated voice sharp with frustration. "Someone is deliberately targeting our operations. We demand a full investigation." Commander Han Bora sat quietly in the human section, watching the proceedings with calm interest. She looked different than she had in previous sessions. Her posture was straighter, her expression more confident. When she finally stood to speak, something in her voice made the entire chamber fall silent. "Respected delegates," she began, her words clear and measured. "The universe has many mysteries that even our advanced civilizations do not fully understand. Sometimes, when systems become too rigid, too aggressive, nature finds ways to restore balance." Vextar spun toward her, his compound eyes glittering with anger. "Are you suggesting that these attacks are natural phenomena?" "I am suggesting," Bora replied calmly, "that when someone pushes too hard against the natural order, the universe has interesting ways of pushing back. Perhaps these incidents are simply corrections." The Vrex delegate hissed softly, his scaled skin changing color with agitation. "Commander Bora, your words sound almost like a threat." Bora smiled slightly, and for the first time in decades, it was not a diplomatic smile. It was something colder, more dangerous. "Respected delegate, I am merely a representative of a peaceful farming world. What possible threat could I pose to your mighty civilizations?" But something in her tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. A few of the more perceptive observers began to wonder if humanity's 40 years of silence might have hidden something more dangerous than weakness. Light years away, Dr. Shin Woo-jin stood in his secret laboratory, watching the most incredible sight in the galaxy. Through the observation window, a dead star burned with new light. The stellar remnant, which had been cold and lifeless for millions of years, now blazed like a newborn sun. "Quantum manipulation successful," Woo-jin reported into his communication device. "The stellar core has been successfully reignited using compressed dark matter injection. Energy output is stable and increasing. It was impossible by every known law of physics." Dead stars did not simply come back to life. Yet there it was, burning brightly in the void, powered by technology that should not have existed. Within hours, alien survey teams detected the phenomenon. Scientists from a dozen different species rushed to study what they assumed was an incredibly rare natural event. When they requested permission to set up research stations in the system, human officials politely agreed and offered to provide local expertise. "It appears to be a spontaneous stellar reignition," Dr. Park Min-ho explained to the alien scientists with a straight face. "We believe it may be caused by unusual dark matter concentrations in this region of space. Quite fascinating, really." The alien scientists accepted this explanation eagerly. After all, humans were known for their agricultural skills, not their understanding of stellar physics. If they said it was a natural phenomenon, it probably was. Only a few observers noticed the timing. The star had reignited exactly 24 hours after the Zeltharian attack on New Geneva. It was probably just a coincidence. Probably. But across the galaxy, a small number of very intelligent beings began to ask uncomfortable questions. They noticed patterns that others missed. They wondered why human diplomats had suddenly become more confident. They questioned whether humanity's reputation for weakness might be carefully maintained fiction. These observers began to watch humanity more closely. What they would discover in the coming weeks would change everything they thought they knew about the galaxy's balance of power. The universe, it seemed, was full of surprises. "Supreme Commander." Vextar was tired of mysterious equipment failures and human riddles. The Zeltharian Empire had ruled through strength for 1,000 years, and they would not be intimidated by farming colonies that grew wheat and spoke in puzzles. If humanity wanted to play games, he would show them what real power looked like. "Prepare the Third Fleet," he ordered his generals in the war chamber of the Zeltharian homeworld. 300 ships, our finest warriors. We will end this human nonsense once and for all." The target was obvious: Earth itself. Strike at the heart of human civilization and the rest would surrender quickly. According to intelligence reports, Earth had only basic planetary defenses and a handful of outdated patrol ships. The battle would last less than an hour. The Zeltharian fleet assembled in deep space, a massive collection of warships that had conquered dozens of worlds. Each vessel bristled with energy weapons and carried thousands of insect warriors ready for ground combat. They had fought the brutal HFY Wars and crushed the Melody Rebellion. No farming world could stand against such might. As they approached the Sol system, Vextar felt confident in his decision. The humans would finally learn their place in the galactic order. After Earth fell, the other human colonies would submit, without resistance. The age of human defiance would end before it had truly begun. But when the Zeltharian fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, they found something impossible waiting for them. Earth's orbital space was filled with structures that had not been there according to any intelligence report. Massive platforms hung in perfect formation around the planet, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that seemed to bend light in strange ways. They looked nothing like any known technology. "What are those things?" Vextar's tactical officer clicked nervously. Before anyone could answer, the human platforms began to glow. Admiral Song Yunji stood on the command deck of the Soul's Pride, humanity's flagship that had been hidden in a lunar shipyard for 20 years. Around her, displays showed the approaching Zeltharian fleet with cold precision. 300 ships, just as intelligence had predicted. "All stations, this is Admiral Song." She spoke calmly into her communication system. "Today we stop pretending to be what we are not. Today we show the galaxy that humanity's choice to be peaceful was exactly that, a choice." The human defense platforms opened fire with weapons that violated every known law of physics. Beams of concentrated stellar plasma erupted from the orbital stations, each one channeling the power of a small sun. The energy beams passed through space like liquid fire, bending around gravitational fields and striking their targets with impossible accuracy. The first wave of Zeltharian ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. The quantum disruption. Weapons tore apart the molecular bonds that held matter together, returning the warships to their component atoms in brilliant flashes of light. Vextar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled. The human weapons seemed to ignore his ship's shields entirely. Energy barriers that could stop planet-killing asteroids offered no protection against technology that operated on principles he did not understand. "Return fire," he screamed at his weapons officers. "Destroy those platforms." The Zeltharian fleet launched everything they had: plasma torpedoes, particle beams, fusion missiles, enough firepower to crack a moon. The weapons struck Earth's defensive barriers and simply disappeared, absorbed into energy fields that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Then the barriers began to glow brighter, and Vextar realized with growing terror that the human defenses were not just stopping his weapons, they were storing the energy and preparing to send it back. The return volley struck the Zeltharian fleet like the wrath of angry gods. Their own weapons, amplified and refined by human technology, tore through their ranks with devastating efficiency. Ships that had survived 100 battles were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Admiral Song watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The battle was proceeding exactly as the simulations had predicted. 17 minutes was the estimated duration for complete enemy fleet destruction, and they were running slightly ahead of schedule. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple Zeltharian vessels." "Ignored," Song replied coldly. "They showed no mercy to the children of New Geneva. They will receive none from us." The few surviving Zeltharian ships attempted to flee, but human gravity manipulation technology held them in place like insects trapped in amber. One by one, they were systematically destroyed with surgical precision. When the battle ended, not a single enemy vessel remained to carry word of their defeat back to the Zeltharian Empire. The human fleet that emerged from Earth's hidden shipyards defied every assumption about human technology. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Vessels that could phase in and out of normal space at will. Weapons that fired concentrated starlight and defensive systems that turned enemy attacks into power sources. Within days, the human fleet arrived at the Zeltharian homeworld. They did not come as conquerors seeking to enslave or destroy. Instead, they systematically dismantled every military installation while leaving civilian populations completely unharmed. Orbital defense platforms were reduced to scrap metal. Military shipyards became expanding clouds of debris. Ground-based weapon emplacements simply ceased to exist. The message was clear and undeniable. The age of Zeltharian dominance was over. Standing before the emergency session of the Galactic Confederation, Commander Lim Jae-won delivered humanity's terms with quiet authority that no one dared question. The galaxy had finally heard humanity's true voice, and it spoke in fire. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy looked very different. The Zeltharian Empire, which had controlled hundreds of star systems, now existed on a single world under human protection. Their former territories had been redistributed to the species they had oppressed for centuries. The insect-like beings who had once terrorized peaceful colonies now lived as refugees in their own homeworld, completely dependent on human charity for survival. Ambassador Kang Yu-jin walked through the rebuilt colony of New Geneva, her footsteps echoing on paths made from a material that seemed to shimmer with internal light. The human reconstruction teams had worked for months to restore what the Zeltharians had destroyed. But this was not simply rebuilding. It was transformation. Children from dozens of different species played together in parks that defied the laws of physics. Gravity fields allowed them to run up walls and across ceilings, laughing as they chased each other through three-dimensional playgrounds. Trees grew in perfect spirals, their leaves changing colors in response to the children's emotions. Flowers bloomed in patterns that told the story of those who had died, ensuring their memory would never fade. At the center of the colony stood a memorial wall covered in names. 15,000 humans who had been murdered simply for refusing to abandon their homes. Among them was Yoon Ji-woo, the 8-year-old girl who had died clutching her handmade doll. Her name was carved in letters that glowed with soft golden light, and beneath it grew a flower that bloomed eternally, never wilting or fading. "The memorial is beautiful," said Dr. Oh Seo-jun, joining Yu-jin beside the wall. He had emerged from decades of secret research to become humanity's chief science advisor to the Confederation. "But I wonder if those children understand what their freedom cost." Yu-jin watched a young Melody child, one of the species the Zeltharians had enslaved for generations, playing with a human boy near the memorial. They were building something together using toys that responded to their thoughts, creating elaborate structures that would have been impossible with ordinary materials. "They understand enough," she replied. "They know they are safe. They know no one will hurt them for being different." Sometimes that is all children need to know. On the other side of the galaxy, Captain An Min Seo stood on the observation deck of the starship Humanity's Voice, watching a star being born. The quantum manipulation technology had successfully compressed a cloud of cosmic dust into a new sun, providing light and warmth to 3 previously dead worlds. Within years, those planets would bloom with life transferred from overcrowded colonies throughout the sector. "The Vrex Syndicate has agreed to our terms," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Lee Jun-ho. "They will dismantle their economic manipulation networks and pay reparations to the species they exploited." Min Seo nodded without surprise. The Vrex had learned what happened to those who refused humanity's gentle suggestions. Their elaborate trade schemes had been countered by human economic algorithms that predicted and neutralized market manipulation before it could take effect. Several Vrex merchant princes had found their vast fortunes simply vanishing overnight, transferred to relief funds for the worlds they had impoverished. "And the other species?" Min Seo asked. "The Kethvar Republic has requested human medical technology to treat the plague that has been killing their children. The Centauri Federation wants to know if we can help restore their dying homeworld. The Astral Union is asking for defensive systems to protect themselves from raiders." It was the same story everywhere. Species that had spent centuries fighting each other were now working together under humanity's quiet guidance. The offer was simple: embrace cooperation and receive technology that could solve problems thought impossible. Choose conflict and find yourself increasingly isolated and powerless. Dr. Park Min-ho sat in his laboratory, no longer hidden, but operating openly as Earth's director of applied physics. The quantum field generator that had once been humanity's greatest secret now powered hospitals, farms, and research facilities across 100 worlds. The technology that could manipulate the basic forces of reality was being used to heal rather than destroy. The agricultural restoration project on Seltharia Prime is ahead of schedule, he reported to the Global Council. Their food production should be sufficient to support their population within the year. It was a strange irony. The humans were now feeding the very beings who had tried to exterminate them. But that was humanity's way, to nurture rather than punish, to build rather than destroy. Even their former enemies received the same compassion as their closest allies. In her office on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Yu Jin looked out at a view that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. The Confederation chambers were filled with representatives from species that had been enslaved, oppressed, or ignored under the old order. The melodies sang in harmonies that made the air shimmer with rainbow colors. The crystalline Vorthak communicated through patterns of light that painted beautiful murals on the walls. The plant-like Sylvani grew flowering vines that carried messages between different delegations. On her desk sat a simple plaque written in Korean and Standard Galactic. Strength. Unused is not weakness, it is wisdom. The galaxy had finally learned that humanity's 40 years of silence had not been submission. It had been patience. They had possessed the power to reshape stars and bend reality itself, but they had chosen to wait until that power was truly needed. Now, having spoken in fire, they had returned to their preferred activities, tending gardens, healing the sick, and exploring the cosmos with wonder rather than conquest. The message was clear to all who witnessed it. Never again would anyone mistake humanity's silence for weakness. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.